So hello, welcome back to my channel. Today we are going to be tackling a huge topic, which is how to move out of the US ASAP. I'm giving you your 6-month countdown timeline. No more dreaming, no more someday. We're going to make this reality happen, and we're going to make it happen in the next few months. And if it's your first time seeing my face, hello, my name is Malika. I'm an American expat who has lived in 3 different countries. Currently, I am living in Hong Kong. I've learned so much from my various experiences living abroad, and I love sharing them on this channel and on my Instagram and on my TikTok, which we still have TikTok at the time I'm filming, but who knows what'll be happening by the time I post this. So you can still find me there, but who knows what will happen in the next few days. And yeah, moving abroad has been such a life-changing experience. And even though I know I will probably move back to the US at some day, at some point, even if it's just for a little while, I'm still just so happy with the choice I made to leave. So a lot of the videos I have on moving abroad have focused on like long-term planning and strategy, but today we're gonna focus on how we're gonna speed up that timeline and get you guys out in 6 months or less. I just feel like a lot of people have been feeling that urgency and thinking about it for a while, and now you might have just decided like 2025 is the year that I'm just going to do it. And I know you might be thinking 6 months sounds like a really impossible time frame, but trust me, with the right planning and the right determination, you can definitely make it happen. So here's what you're gonna do if you wanna move out of the USA in 6 months or less and start your new life in a new country. Foremost, I do have to say I am not a legal expert, I am not an immigration expert, I am not a financial planner. So this video is just for informational purposes, and I'm sharing what I have learned and what has worked for me in my experience. But you should not consider this legal or financial advice. So number 1, choose your destination, and that means research, and do it quickly. Don't just pick a random place, like you have to consider a lot of factors. Cost of living is a big one, like can you maintain your lifestyle based on the cost of living in that country or have a better quality of life than you could afford at home? What are the visa requirements? Like, are they feasible for your financial situation? Because a lot of times finances is what will get your visa approved or denied. Most visas do have like income requirements or employment requirements, so you have to see like what you actually could legally qualify for. Like the fact is that, yeah, you'll see social media full of like digital nomads and expat coaches who are like, oh yeah, I picked up and lived abroad. And honestly, like a lot of what they're doing is illegal. They're not on a legal immigration status. They might just be kind of like entering the country on a tourist visa and then doing visa runs across a border thinking that they can reset their kind of entry for another 3 months, or they're living in a country and like working when you're not supposed to be working on a tourist visa. So there's a lot of things like that that happen, and that's not the kind of advice that I'm going to give you. You can do whatever you want, we're all grown here, but that's just personally not the kind of advice and structure that I'm gonna give you. I will always recommend that you do things legally. Yeah, that takes longer and it might be more complicated, but you might be more happy and grateful in the long run that you did it that way. Another factor to consider is the lifestyle. Like, are you a city person? I'm definitely a city person. Do you want to stay in that kind of like bustling, like high energy environment? Or do you want to move abroad because you want a lower pace of life? And then maybe you want to be in like a little beach town or like one of these small kind of more rural villages where things are really just like slower and more peaceful. And also consider language, because some countries will have a structure where you need to learn the local language a little bit more, and then also some cities and provinces, like even within those countries, will be harder to navigate without the language. Years ago, I lived and worked in Italy, and even though I didn't necessarily need the language fluently for my job, it came in really handy. Just for a little backstory, I moved to Italy. I did learn while I was there, so I was studying in school and taking lessons and practicing, and got to be pretty comfortable, like close to like conversation slash borderline. I don't want to say fluent because I just never felt fluent, but I was getting around comfortably. I was working in an Italian company, but they kind of hired me because I was American and was working mostly with the American head office and their international clients. So I could kind of go through the day using only like 30% Italian and 70% English because that's the job that I had. And then getting around was just like, again, it was fine. And now I live in Hong Kong where I don't need Cantonese at all. Like everyone speaks the language. So that's what's worked for me, but that's not the case everywhere. Some countries and even like cities in the countries, you'll really need to hone in on those language skills. So now is a good time to start that practice. If you can afford it or if you have the time, think about places where you might want to go visit for like a quick little trip to see if you like it before moving, or think about places you've already been. Like if there's somewhere that you've been before and you're like, I really like it, I really felt good there and really felt comfortable there, and I felt like I wanted to extend my vacation but I couldn't. Maybe those are the kind of places you should add to the top of your list when you're thinking about where you want to move. Number 2, finances. This is probably the biggest obstacle for most people who want to move abroad. It's really not one that I'm going to recommend that you mess around with. Like, it costs money to travel, it costs money to live, and living abroad is just not going to be an exception. You might find that the cost of living in a lot of places, it's cheaper what you're paying than in the US, but that's why we're going to do our research in step 1, so we know what we're getting ourselves into and know how to budget accordingly. So I always recommend having 3 to 6 months of living expenses saved, and the dollar amount that is going to depend on the cost of living and how much it will cost for you to move to the place that you decided you want to go. Remember, in a lot of countries, it's not uncommon for landlords to charge foreigners like up to 6 months rent, sometimes even the whole term of your lease. Number 1, just because they can, but number 2, because you're a foreigner and they couldn't necessarily come after you the same way they could a local for damages or things that you might do to like mess up the apartment. So that's just another financial consideration to keep in mind. Now is also a good time to think about downsizing. So one of my favorite travel and expat creators, Cara Celeste West, she talks a lot about in her journey to moving abroad. Her family started downsizing aggressively before they actually moved. They lived in a smaller apartment than they could afford. They started selling their things and just cutting back and saving. And now they are just living the dream. I think they're in Greece right now, and I absolutely love her. So yeah, downsizing is going to be a good way for you to start thinking about lowering your cost of living so you can funnel more into that savings and move abroad goal. You can also think about your employment. So obviously remote work is really popular, but those jobs are incredibly hard to get, especially jobs that will let you do like remote international, because a lot won't. Before I left the US, I had a remote job, and they were very clear that, yeah, we're a remote company, but that's remote in the States. That is not remote wherever you want it to be. So some companies will be very, very particular about that. I know people who thought that they had a remote international job and then ended up getting fired within a few months because the company changed their mind. So while remote work can be incredible and can be flexible, you just have to prepare that there are no guarantees. But also, don't overlook just traditional regular jobs. When I was in Italy, I was working a regular in-office job at an Italian company. And it's entirely possible to do that and do so successfully. And I actually really loved it because it helped me get more immersed in the culture and learn more and meet more people than I would have if I were just like on my own all day or kind of bopping around cafes and being on my laptop. Like, it gave you a different sense of purpose and integration and structure in your days. So obviously the kind of job you can get will depend on your background and your skills and sometimes your education. Job hunting is never pleasant. It's always hard, but doing it internationally is something you should definitely consider as a really viable path to move abroad. There are also a lot of companies that offer relocation, but that is more of a long-term strategy, not a get you out in 6 months strategy. But if you're interested in kind of a company or career path that will help you get relocation opportunities, I can do a whole separate video about that. I'm actually in Hong Kong on a relocation package from my husband's employer. If you're older and you have savings and assets, you could also think about early retirement. A lot of people retire abroad, and there are whole segments of golden visas or retirement visas that you can get and that you don't have to have a job or regular income for. They're just based on your savings and assets. So that's something for whoever's watching that might be a little bit older. And if you're a little bit younger, or really honestly at any age, you can look at study abroad opportunities to get your foot in the door. That's how I moved to Italy. I was on a student visa. And then I had an internship as part of my program, my graduate school program. And then after the internship, they wanted to hire me, so they decided to do all the paperwork to sponsor my work visa. And so that was part of my journey. That was my journey pretty much with only 2 or 3 years work experience in the US and then going to grad school. So I wasn't like super senior. I didn't have anything super specialized or really fancy like qualifications, and I was able to have that opportunity. And I want to stress that because Yeah, I was just a regular grad student who I worked hard, but I also just got lucky. And I think that if that can happen to me, it can definitely happen to you. So now we're up to logistics. We're getting ready to move. We're almost at the door. What are you actually supposed to do? So you've got your place figured out. You've got the budget. You've got the job lined up or the remote job. Now it's time to really get into planning. You have to do your visa and immigration process, but you also have to make sure you have health care. And in some cases, proof of health care will be required for your visa anyway. You can also think about shipping your stuff if that's in the budget and you want to be able to like really feel at home. There are a lot of companies that do air and freight shipments for like household goods. When I moved to Italy, I packed a bunch of boxes and took them to the post office because that was cheaper than FedEx or DHL. That also worked too. They got stuck in customs because I messed up the paperwork, but they made it eventually. You can also just consider storing your stuff at home and then just taking whatever you can carry in suitcases. And then if you decide you want to kind of go back at a certain point to visit and bring more of your stuff, that's an option. And you also have to think about some of the boring but essential legal and financial matters. So update your will, update your medical directives, your power of attorney, all those really important legal documents, and make sure someone that you trust at home has access to them in case you have an emergency or you need help when you're overseas. And this is dark, we're getting dark, but make sure that your travel insurance or your medical insurance covers repatriation so that if there is a loss, your family can bring you back home. If you don't have a credit card that has no international fees, make sure you get one, you will need that. And you can consider getting like a P.O. box or some kind of mail forwarding solution for the first few months so you're not missing any like important documents that might be coming to your old address. I also recommend registering with the State Department STEP program once you move abroad. That'll help you have real-time assistance and emergency updates from the embassy or consulate in your new home. So I know that might have seemed like a lot, but let's recap the little 6-month checklist, okay? So month 1 and 2, you're gonna be researching, and deciding where you're gonna live. Finalize your destination, secure your visas, start apartment hunting, all of those things. And of course, create your budget. Month 3 and 4, start downsizing, start selling stuff, start storing stuff, and start narrowing down what are those essential items that you're gonna carry in like 3 suitcases. Month 5, tie up your loose ends in the US, do your legal paperwork, double check all your healthcare and finances, and if you're doing your shipment or shipping things abroad, organize that with the company. And number 6, it's time for the final adventure. So start spending quality time with your friends and family. You're gonna miss them. Go back to your favorite places that you won't get to go visit for a while and just kind of like reminisce all the things that you love about America before you leave and don't get to experience them anymore, because I can assure you that there will be things that you think you just want to run away from, but then when you're gone, you'll miss them and you'll realize that you have been taking some of them for granted. So just make sure you're embracing the experience, enjoying it, and just soaking up all the time that you have before you go on to your new adventure. And then you're gonna hop on the plane and you're out of there, you're starting your new life, and it's gonna be incredible. So I know this is a condensed version, I packed a lot in here, and there's a lot to consider with like such a huge life change. And as I said earlier, this is all just informational. It's really just things for you to think about that I have learned, that have worked for me, that I've picked up from talking to other people who have done the same things that I have. But it is not real legal or financial advice, so don't come for me. And this might all sound really, really overwhelming and really scary right now, but trust me, like moving abroad is just such a huge life change and you're going to love it. It might be scary, it might be uncomfortable, there might be some culture shocks, but overall, it's just gonna change your life so much for the better. The experience of meeting amazing people, experiencing new cultures, getting to go to crazy bucket list destinations just for weekend trips, it's just such a game changer. And trust me, all the hard work and preparation and anxiety and nervousness, it'll all be worthwhile and it's all gonna work out. So thank you so much for watching this video. I really hope you found it helpful. I really, really hope you liked it. If you did, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who's planning to move abroad or who might just find this information helpful. And you can also check me out on Instagram and maybe TikTok. I don't really know. I'm gonna put my TikTok down there anyway if it still miraculously exists next week. But for now, you guys can definitely find me on YouTube and Insta. And I will catch you in the next video, hopefully, possibly even while you are living in a different country. Take care.